If we talk about India's energy mix, we can see that thermal power is at almost 60% and renewable is around 40 to 45%, which is a fantastic, I think, change in the energy mix when it comes to India from where it used to be in the past. India aims to create upwards of 50 million green jobs by 2030. This is as per the climate goals under the COP26. So this is going to be huge opportunity. And I think, again, to what Wishwa Talks is always talking about is it's not that there are opportunities, there are plenty of opportunities, but there is a skill gap, right? So the employability aspect is where there is a huge opportunity, and it is across the sectors and across the value chain. So what does climate change mean? Now, when we are talking about climate change, it is nothing but these heat waves. So it's hot when it's supposed to be cool. It is cold when it's supposed to be hot. It's raining when it's not supposed to rain, and it is causing high levels of pollution in places like cities like Delhi, Bombay. All these cities now are having high air pollution. So this is just to give perspective of per capita consumption by country. And I think this is very critical today when we are talking about energy. We can clearly see that what per capita eventually means is what one person is consuming in that country in terms of units of electricity for the entire year. Obviously, if you see on the right-hand side of the screen, you see that India is around 12 to 1300 units per person, right? The capita consumption. But the highest is obviously Iceland, where it is 53,000 units. So the disparity between the highest and where Asia is today, there is a stark difference. And this is very important for us to understand is because the Nordic countries are now completely moving towards renewables, and there is a reason because their consumption levels are very high, and there is a lot of data available as to why the consumption is high. If you go into their current aluminum smelters, and they have a lot of other entities that are using high electricity, but of course the population is also very low, so that is also something we have to keep in mind. But if you see historically, we can see that the per capita consumption, so the importance and the reliance on energy is becoming more and more critical as the population is going up and development is happening, and people are constantly finding that it is not anymore about having a roof on your space on your head and having some food to eat. Electricity is also becoming like a must have, a necessity now. So here is just the units of electricity consumed by individuals, but the next slide kind of shows the energy mix by country. This is again important to show that oil, coal, gas are continuing to be a huge part of energy mix. And while wind and solar are now, over the last maybe a decade, more importantly in the last 5 years, have started to increase their share, oil, coal, gas, nuclear are continuing to be a larger part of non-renewable energy sources. And if you look at India, of course, we are probably the fourth largest generator of electricity, and we have a huge reliance still on coal and other materials, right? So the sources of electricity. Today, if we talk about India's energy mix, we can see that thermal power is at almost 60% and renewable is around 40 to 45%, which is a fantastic, I think, change in the energy mix when it comes to India from where it used to be in the past. And the reason I talk about this slide is very important is we are ultimately talking about sustainability and the reliance on making a change in our habits, in making sure we are supporting community, development by focusing on smart cities, smart grids, everything, right? So you can see that thermal power. So all this is what is generating greenhouse gases today and leading to climate change, right? So what does climate change mean? Now, when we are talking about climate change, it is nothing but these heat waves. So it's hot when it's supposed to be cool. It is cold when it's supposed to be hot. It's raining when it's not supposed to rain. And it is causing high levels of, pollution in places like, cities like Delhi, Bombay. All these cities now are having high air pollution. And I think climate change, very interestingly, is like a topic like COVID, when we all suffered with COVID timeframe, everyone was impacted. And everyone is impacted by the same challenge. What is interesting is we all came together to solve the problem. And I think climate change is identical to that, where everyone is facing it. It's just that the amount I may face versus somebody else in another geography is probably varying, but we are all facing it. And there are repercussions. If somebody doesn't take action, it can have repercussion on other parts of the world. So I think I always try to draw the similarity where, when we are talking about UN coming together, the Paris conversations, it's all to make sure that all countries are aligned on how they are ensuring they're going to do their part to ensure that there is some amount of reduction on the climate change aspect. So it's very simple. I think we've been taught from the time we were 5 years old what is renewable energy and what is its importance. It's very simple. It's clean and produces very less greenhouse gas emissions. So a lot of people, at the end of the talk, I'm sure we will get into conversations around what happens to the batteries that will be out of warranty, or what will happen to the panels when they're out of warranty, what happens to the turbines if they have to be pulled down. All that is true, right? These are challenges. Nobody's even denying any of those things. There has to be a process of clean recycling. But the fact that, if you look at how much greenhouse gases it's reducing versus how much it may eventually create because of these challenges is very minimal. And it's sustainable. Obviously, renewable is where basically the source is unlimited, like the water, the wind, the sun, all these are unlimited sources. Hence, we are able to call them as renewable. And it completely reduces our dependence on foreign oil and increases energy security, right? That is super critical. The biggest challenge with renewables today, as everyone knows, is obviously the fact that they are intermittent in nature. So only when there is wind, it produces wind energy. Only when there is sunlight, it produces, solar energy. So these are the challenges, right? When there is high pressure of water is when it's producing you electricity from hydel power. But that is why there is a more dependence now. Slowly, there is a shift. For the last 5-7 years, you see the shift in battery technologies and the cost of lithium-ion batteries, etc., where storage is becoming more and more critical to ensure there is a more balanced ecosystem of renewable energy with storage. That is where the future is today. And of course, it's creating a lot of jobs and opportunities for economic growth. Now let's get into the fundamental thing that is very important for everyone to understand. If you talk about global warming, it is nothing but the whole world, we are trying to limit and restrict the increase in the growing temperature to be less than 1.5 degrees. I think that is the end goal that everyone has, is to reduce it. And we are already at this 1 degree rise. So there are huge repercussions if we go above 1.5 degrees. And this can be debated, like the first part of Wishwa talk kind of highlighted. Some people may accept it, some people may not accept it, but then they have their own set of discussions around it. So this conversation can be, again, debated highly, but 1.5 degrees is where the limit is, where we feel that we need to do whatever it takes. It is not about just emitting. There is a lot of technology that is happening on carbon capture also. So this is still at the lab level. They're not at very high commercial levels, but it is also to reduce the carbon footprint overall. And one other fundamental thing that is great that is happening is the fact that we have renewable energy costs have been coming down. So wind technology, solar, etc., are all coming down. But at the same time, the electricity rates, as you as a consumer must be seeing that your bills have always been going up and not coming down. And the reason is, of course, the same. Everyone, there is inflation, there is consumption patterns are going up. So there is on an average, the electricity rates have been increasing between 5 to 10%. And here, if you look at the GHG emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, energy sector, right? That is 75% of the emission today is coming from energy sector. So that is why the whole world is talking about moving to electric, right? It's all about the future is clean. It's about moving electric to ensure that these emissions can be reduced as much as possible. This is just, again, to give you a simple idea. If you really look at unit rate of electricity and the price of solar system, like I come from the solar background, so I will spend a little bit more emphasis on solar aspect, because I believe I've spent some time in wind energy sector as well. But if you look at the scalability and modular behavior, solar, and for India, like if you look at the dynamics in India on a countrywide basis, our load curve as in our consumption pattern kind of goes up in the summers because of the AC loads go up, and it comes down through the year. And that's exactly how the generation of the solar is also. It matches our peak load requirements. So it is a fantastic opportunity to harness solar today in India. And if you look at this traditionally, you see that the electricity rates, right, 2015 to 2022, the unit rates of electricity on an average have gone up from, let's say, 4.5, 5.5 rupees to almost 8 rupees per unit of electricity. And this all depends on which state you are in, what slab rate do you fall in, and how many units you're consuming on a monthly basis. And at the same time, if you look at the solar cost, the cost, which is the black line, it has been continuously coming down. So the cost, probably when I started my solar journey in 2008 with National Solar Mission timelines, 1 megawatt of solar kind of costed approximately 20 crores of investment to put in one megawatt. Today, 1 megawatt of solar at that similar large scale costs nothing more than 2.5 to 3.5 crores, right? So that is the range depending on the project dynamics, the size, etc., and the technology. But that is the scale to which solar prices have dropped because of the scaling, because of the promotion the government has put in and the emphasis they have given in terms of subsidies, etc. I mean, China has invested heavily into it. So we've now becoming a self-reliant country over the period. So what are the immediate economic and employment opportunities within the energy and the future of renewable energy sector? So if you really look at it, the growing demand for green jobs, right? India aims to create upwards of 50 million green jobs by 2030. This is as per the climate goals under the COP26. So this is going to be huge opportunity. And I think, again, to what Wishwa Talks is always talking about, is it's not that there are opportunities, there are plenty of opportunities, but there is a skill gap, right? So the employability aspect is where there is a huge opportunity, and it is across the sectors and across the value chain. And I will get into the value chain with simple examples. And there is another growing demand for, like, catalysts. Like, India is not where it was, 15 years ago. The way all private sector companies are doing, they have been growing. The CSR aspect becomes a very big angle. And of course, ESG compliance for corporates are also driving this initiatives towards renewable energy adoption. Other opportunities, this is just a high level summary. India is the world's third largest energy consumer, with rising demand due to rapid industrialization, urbanization, and population growth. I think this is a given. Hence, our reliance on coal, thermal power is going to continue to be there, but there is a lot of emphasis to ensure that renewable energy is also going to be part of a good part of the energy mix. And the country aims to be net zero by 2070 and has committed to 50% of its energy capacity to come from non-fossil fuel by 2030, which I think is definitely possible. We are on track to achieving that. And with renewable energy, main focus is going to be solar, wind, hydro, and I explained to you. So I was like, during my fellowship at Oxford University, I spent some time in UK. If you look at UK's market, the renewable energy, though there is a lot of emphasis on solar adoption, you see that wind energy is a lot more popular there, because, again, similar to India, where the load curve here is higher in summers, in UK, with the winters being very cold, they start using a lot of heating. So their load curve works very well with the wind turbines schedule. So wind energy is extremely popular in certain regions. Solar is like a secondary when it comes to, ranking wise in terms of preference. And it's just to do with the load curve and the demand supply issues. Now getting into the renewable energy sector wise opportunities. And I think there are so many opportunities within the energy sector. This is just some of them that I kind of put together. One is solar, small scale, CNI, large scale, and floating solar. This is basically, small scale is what Freyer Energy is into. What we like, there are a lot of companies that are putting up solar, like on your homes, on your factories, schools, colleges, hospitals, communities, without storage right now, because there is reasonable amount of grid stability in some parts of India. Let me not say most of India. As long as you have grid stability, you can go for a small scale solar on top of your roof. As long as you have the roof rights, there is shadow free space, and you can deploy small scale solar. And of course, I'm sure most of you on this program have heard about PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. Basically, that is Prime Minister, Government of India's initiative, where they are trying to solarize 1 crore homes at the earliest, right? So that is their target. And they have done about 10 lakh homes are already solarized under that scheme since last year. But the pace is still relatively slow. They want this to happen at a much faster pace. So they are trying to provide subsidies for homes and business homes, primarily residential homes and apartment communities, to go solar. And I think the subsidy is very, very lucrative. And the payback is, let's say, whatever customer is investing, they get a return within 3 to 4 years maximum, 3 years to 3.5 years. And the solar asset life is 25 years. So same thing with CNI customers. So customer today, what is happening is, even if, let's say, it's a small MSME customer who is probably manufacturing mattresses, let's say, for example, for IKEA. IKEA has a rule that, I will not purchase from you unless you're able to provide, your energy mix with how you're procuring your electricity for manufacturing these mattresses. It may seem strange, but IKEA will now drive that across all its vendors to ensure that all the vendors are falling into the ESG compliance category, and they're having a push to be accountable for their electricity requirements. So a lot of companies, suppliers, are getting impacted. Same thing with Microsoft. So what does Microsoft do? Microsoft says that, we want to have all our vendors to be carbon neutral by 2025, 2030. So large organizations putting mandatory responsibilities on their vendor clients, so that they are taking action and making sure they're taking, either they're owning wind turbine assets, or they're owning solar assets, or they're buying carbon credits from the free market. And the second thing is the large scale solar, which I think some of you, if you're driving by cities, you can see that these panels are installed on the ground mount. And these are large scale solar. And today, what is becoming more and more popular is the third aspect here that I mentioned, RTC, round the clock, solar plus wind plus storage, is becoming more popular. And then the floating solar. This is relatively new. It's probably something in the last maybe 3 to 5 years that has been picking up popularity. This is in ideal ponds or small river beds. You can put up solar. These are for floating panels, and that is generating electricity. Of course, at the face of it, looks great because there is a lot of cooling that comes from the water. Evaporation is reduced, so the water is going to remain, and then the panels, and you don't need additional land, so the pond itself is becoming like a space to kind of use for generating electricity. Wind energy, primarily two types, onshore and offshore. Onshore is when they're within the land, and offshore is when they're in the, slightly deep into the ocean belt. Round the clock, like I said, is nothing but solar plus wind plus storage, which is now becoming more and more popular. Like I said, it is important for India to develop that grid infrastructure where, you can't keep pumping units of solar into the grid where it's not ready to accept. So the grid, there will be a lot of challenges within the grid if too many injection points are there for pumping in electricity, and it is a pumping in electricity when it is not required. I think the load balancing is supremely critical. What is happening now is with solar, wind, and storage, it is a little bit more stable where you're giving round the clock, right? So you're able to say that I'm able to provide with certainty. I will be able to provide, let's say, 100 units every hour, every minute, etc. Right? So that is what we are now talking about with solar, wind, and storage. And we are obviously very much aware of electric vehicle adoption. I think India has, the two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler market has, is doubling, tripling every year on year when you look at the adoption. And it is clearly because the technology is growing, the battery cost has come down, and the affordability is much better now. And of course, the infrastructure is coming along as we speak. And I think it's only getting better with the newer communities where it is mandatory to have the electric vehicle charging points, etc. So there is a lot of infrastructure that's being created. And it is more popular in hyper-local requirements, right? Hyper-local, I mean, is within a city, because the infrastructure may not be great outside the city to another city where you're going. You are not sure of how the highway, charging points will be. But there is a lot of demand for delivery boys, last mile delivery, public transport. All these people are looking at electric vehicle, for their delivery boys, etc. And there is, I think, a lot that is happening even with the three-wheeler, which is like your autos, and your four-wheelers, which are your, regular cars, and also, of course, trucks, etc., are moving towards becoming electric today. And of course, now India is trying to become number one when it comes to hydrogen production and exports. So there is a huge emphasis on manufacturing of electrolyzers and fuel cell technology today. While all this is happening, like I said, the fundamental thing will continue to remain as grid modernization. So smart grids will become critical, IoT analysts, and then power system analysis and smart metering, which is not uniform across India. It's happening only in certain places. And there is a lot that is happening on this front. With on the left-hand side, when you look at it, there is a target of about 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. And I think we are probably only at 200 gigawatts as of date. So there is a huge opportunity for renewable energies to take off. Again, in terms of opportunities, when I talk about, let's pick any sector, right? So let's say we talk about solar, the value chain, the opportunities exist across the value chain. When I say value chain, in order to put an entire solar system in place, there are about 30 to 40 components that have to come together. Similarly, if it's a wind turbine, there will be some 40, 50 components that have to come together. It's the tower, it is the blades, it's the nacelle, it is the gearbox inside it. But all these raw materials, right? To even make that, you have raw materials. So the production for the raw materials will also go up. So the opportunities for jobs will go up at the raw material stage, at the integration of it becoming a simple product, services, and then it becomes at distribution. So once the product is made, there are opportunities at the distribution phase. And then once you distribute it, retailing it and end customer. And after that also, there is after sales support, finance, and then there is a lot to do with efficiencies, right? So that is where we are talking about data analytics, AI, ML. So across the value chain, there is going to be huge amount of opportunities and skill upgrades required for people in the country of India. So I think the roles, the jobs and all, I think will evolve more around the intersection of technology and business. So there is going to be huge amount of demand where, careers will start to, work will be more revolved around product managers, data analysts, tech consultants, and business analysts are in high in demand. At the same time, there is going to be a lot of emphasis on other sectors like, supply chain management, etc., where we are talking about it. And of course, entrepreneurial and innovative opportunities also exist. And entrepreneurship always does not mean that you're trying to solve a big problem. Any gap can be addressed at any scale. And people have that opportunity today to stay local and continue to solve a problem and don't have to migrate to a bigger city for opportunities. It is possible to stay wherever they are today and to be able to leverage technology. And I think these are, again, simple, basic things about how skill sets are required for employability. I think you obviously need some amount of subject knowledge expertise. In the past, it was very hard to gather this data. With today, with ChatGPT, with a lot of these edutech companies coming and educating, government of India with skill development expertise where they're putting programs together, it is going to be fairly simple for people to adopt these things that are already functional and or leverage it to upskill themselves. And I think another important thing will be embracing technology, right? Mainstream engineers are considered to shy away from using technology products, etc. But in life, you have to be comfortable using technology. We are all using UPI. We are all placing orders on Amazon. We are all, at workplaces, we are using tools and softwares to ensure that we are doing it. And this is going to become more and more important at every level where people have to, right? Like today, let's say you are getting a car insurance claim. The boy who comes to take pictures of your car and uploads the data is also going through an app. He's gone through a training. He knows he has to follow these 10 steps. Similarly, the girl or somebody who's coming and delivering the food at your house, or, they're also following the app, the technology that they have to use, and the 10-step process that they have to go through to ensure that they deliver and they do their job properly. But they have to embrace technology, right? Like not embracing technology will become a challenge if not, right? And I think fundamentally problem solving skills, I think it is human psychology where we hesitate to a point, to point out mistakes, issues. But I think we have to learn to find a solution for a problem if we are facing it on a day-to-day basis, and a small improvement can come a long way. And of course, the other skills are basic like communication skills. Like I said, it is easier today because there is a lot more access to improving all these things today than it was maybe many years ago, where you needed support from special coaches, or you didn't know where to get that help from. And again, this is very simple. I have some pictures at the end of the slide, Q&A, which share some pictures to show you how renewable energy is impacting communities, etc. But we have recently also done some projects where there are these RO units for providing clean drinking water for communities. But what the problem that they were facing, this company that was setting up these RO systems at district level, Grameen level, small locations, was that they did not have reliable electricity. So when people came, line queued up, the water is over in the tank, and now they don't have any electricity for the next 2 hours. There's a power cut. So the reliability or power reliability was very low. So we provided solar energy for them so that, especially during the daytime when there is electricity with batteries, they're able to have 24/7 water is being nicely pumped and purified, and the local communities can come and fill their tanks. And so this was a very interesting thing where, you have now not dependent on, getting free electricity from the government, etc., but you're self-reliant. Similarly, the minute you have access to electricity, you're more empowered, you have better job opportunities, you are able to flourish. There is economic development. It's environmentally safe because you have now street lights that are operational, etc. So it is more safer. And at the same time, we are developing smart cities. So there is good opportunity for economic development locally. And distributed energy. The distributed energy is nothing but where you generate is where you consume electricity. So you're trying to go through, provide distributed energy sources so that people are self-reliant in that location. They don't have to move to other cities and other locations, right? This is the future of renewable energy. These are just some pictures of installations on homes and factories and rooftop businesses today. If you look at the one on top, this is on top of a canal at, where they didn't have a lot of space, sewage treatment plant. So we did panels on top of the canal. This is a microgrid. Microgrids are nothing but these are given for tribals in very remote locations with populations of between 20 people to 800 people kind of population. We have done it in Andhra, we've done it in Jharkhand, UP, Uttar Pradesh. So all these locations we've created this microgrid. So basically there is absolutely no grid for these tribal villagers who are living in the forested areas or very remote locations. And to lay a grid line by the government, obviously it's going to cost a lot, right? So to lay the entire electricity infrastructure line and to provide reliable power. Instead, the government has given tenders out like, why don't you install in these 40, 50 hamlets where, there are this many population people are living, provide it for them. So we put the street lights, we've given a electricity point at their home, etc. So now they have, like I said, if they're in a forest, etc., their day starts very late and ends very early because it is very unsafe for them to travel outside the location or to come back later in the night due to safety reasons. But once we have put in the street lighting and given them access to mobile charging, etc., in their home, it started to get much better, and they were empowered. And also some of the very small villages started to migrate to this location and utilize the electricity. This is just a snapshot of what impact we have created so far. We have given more than 9,000 homes solar power today, and a lot of commercial and industrial establishments as well, schools, colleges, hospitals, factories, and we've done 120 microgrids and more than 200 plus solar water pumps for farmers. So this is just the snapshot for Freyr Energy.